Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast today. You have the last word.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello there, it's another Wednesday for your current affairs program on Leadership Television, The Big Issue. My name is Winifred Webo, as usual, your host on the program. And of course, as you can see with me in the studio, I have leadership news analyst Chibuzo Ukaiwe on today's episode of the program. And of course, today's on Big Issue, we are looking at fallout of leadership conference and awards that took place yesterday in Abuja. Of course, we have the keynote speaker, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, who spoke on only drastic actions. I think that is the takeaway from his keynote yesterday. Only drastic actions can save Nigeria's economy. At the 16th Leadership Conference and Awards in Abuja yesterday, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, asserted that as Nigeria finds itself in a profound economic turmoil resulting in diminished purchasing power, hyperinflation, devaluation of the naira currency, and disruptions in the food supply chain, it must be ready to take bold and tough decisions in order to forge ahead. He attributed these woes to a decade of mismanagement and official corruption, primarily under the tenure of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Professor Moghalu highlighted the past 10 years during which the All Progressives Congress, the ruling All Progressive Congress, has been in power as particularly detrimental to the growth and development of the country. In today's The Big Issue, we are looking at the salient issues raised in the keynote. Chibuzo, you were there yesterday at Leadership's Conference and Award Ceremony. First, I just want you to do a recap. What do you have to say about the speech, the confidence of our keynote speaker, Professor Kingsley Moghalu?
Well, first of all, let me say we had a very, very, impactful award, and I don't think it was, if anything, it was an improvement on the previous ones, much more thought-provoking, much more insightful and instructive. And so it was not unexpected that when you bring a person in the stature, intellectual stature, and experience of a professor of political economics, in the person of Professor Moghalu, you will get anything less than what has been put out there by him yesterday. He gave a candid, I think he gave a very candid, assessment of the situation on the ground, and drawing from insights, not just from his academic background, from insights as an active participant in the economic political space of Nigeria. He gave a very, very insightful, and thought-provoking take on not just what the problem is, but how we can get to that.
Exactly. I think that was what many Nigerians agreed that made Leadership Conference and Awards yesterday different from other awards, because we had a situation whereby the keynote speaker was actually giving solutions to the problems therein in the economy. First, let's look at some of the salient issues he raised yesterday. He talked about agreeing with the forex and petrol subsidy removal, but however, what he frowns at is that there was no cushion to cushion the effect of this petrol subsidy and forex restrictions.
Yes, absolutely. It was. I think that was an entry point into his keynote address, because he was quite. He said the move was bold, necessary, and perhaps one of the symptoms of decades long practice, unhealthy practice for us, our economy, the oil dependent economy, and the poor, approach to how we ought to have used it. But that, in spite of the boldness and the audacious move by government, the morning after, I think that is the exact words. The morning after, meaning after removing these two, taking these two critical policies, it appeared as if the government didn't have a clear plan.
However,
and he cited instances as to why he thought that was because the government couldn't be making that kind of decision without having a CBN person that he was going to work with. Remember, because of that period, Emefiele was being pulled left and right while all this was playing out, with regard to the floating of the currency now. And then before the new CBN president, new CBN governor came into office, it was about 6 months or thereabout. Yes. And before he even had to do his first monetary policy meeting, it took a much longer time. Whereas all of these policies had been laid out. So it created a lot of
but however, Chibuzo, many Nigerians
also
are not sharing in that his belief, because many Nigerians believe that even in developed countries where subsidy do exist, because this is a way of us also indirectly providing for the poor in the country. So why would the federal government remove petrol subsidy, which was largely enjoyed by the poor? They don't share
the issue.
in that.
No, like the issue he was trying to make, and I don't think it is necessarily a problem of the subsidy itself. Moving of the subsidy being the problem. The problem for most people, and for him too, which he echoed, was that it was a problem of poor implementation of the policy. That is actually the problem. Because if you ask other aspirants, other candidates in the course of the election, they all agreed to remove it. But the problem is the process and the way you go about doing that. There was no clear plan in the case of this administration, and he highlighted that. He said, okay, fine, that even if you want to take the policy, because now there's a new directive around, why should we take the Brenton Wood suggestions all the time without paying clear attention to our own peculiarities?
Yes.
He said there are pros and cons to it. It was just an advice. It's merely an advice. So it is up to us to take or not to take. We can pick the ones that are suitable to us, modify it into our own political, economical climate, and work with it. It doesn't mean whatever they give to you, you just take hook, line, and sinker. And don't forget, he was taking off the subsidy thing, just like he did with the floating of the naira, without a thorough cabinet. In fact, there was no cabinet at all before you talk of thorough. On inauguration, he just went, subsidy is gone. You have no cabinet. There was no clear plan. There was no, and so that was another issue Moghalu raised. The aftermath of that was when other stakeholders began to engage the government and to ask what is going on. We started seeing knee-jerk reactions. You understand? So these are the critical points.
Now, another critical issue Moghalu raised yesterday was the issue of economic team. Of course, this didn't go well with the Minister of Information, who represented President Bola Tinubu at the event. Of course, Moghalu took a swipe at the federal government's economic team and declared emphatically that Nigeria does not have an economic team in place. What is your view on that?
Of course, he's a political economist, and he has done this at the highest level, not just in Nigeria but even abroad. He still consults for a lot of them, so he definitely knows what he's talking about. And there is no way most people would fault the suggestions he raised as to raising real people who have real economists across different. Because he gave an idea. He gave a clear example of what he was talking about. Experts in labor, experts in various sectors who have a clear cut idea on their sectors to serve as not just an ad hoc economic team, but people that will be stand, on ground
Yes,
throughout a
24/7.
long period of time, not just people you shake up at any point in time and you say,
You meet
people
once
that
in a
can
while.
mold a philosophical approach to our economy and our politics. I think the whole idea, with his speech was one that was built around how you can marry the philosophy and the economy, getting people, philosophical thinkers who can manage not just your politics but the economy as well. I think that is at the heart of what he was trying to express.
Now, what do you also have to say? Because on the part of not Nigeria not having an economic team, you also said that he was also against using private investors, including private investors, or the economic team, on the basis that these private investors will actually be looking out for their own personal interest and not for the country's interest. What do you have to say about that?
Well, definitely, he's not. He's not speaking anything that is. Do I say new in that sense? Because you are bringing a private investor, but you don't expect them to do anything that would hurt their interest.
Their interest.
That is one. But you can also make use of their expertise and their knowledge, and get their buy-in to help the economy work. So it's not. I don't totally think you should just disregard them in the sense that they shouldn't come close to policy making and policy thinking. You understand? Policy thinking process. No, they're also stakeholders. You can bring them in, but you should also be mindful of how you allow them play around.
But that also reminds us, because Professor Moghalu was actually emphatic on 10 years, and of course 8 of which belongs to the APC administration. And remember, if you recall, that during the former President Muhammadu Buhari's tenure, he did also have an economic team in place. It was after much outcry by Nigerians, he had to set up one headed by the Vice President, who incidentally is son.
Well, I think it's pretty clear why everybody now seems to think that the Buhari government was, a disaster. But this is not strange, because these were some of the things we've been saying on this platform for a very long time. We kept saying this all through the course of his second term. Well, at least the better part of when we started this political, the big issue platform, we kept emphasizing the lack of depth and the flagrant inefficiencies and lack of tact and craft under the Buhari government. And it's not surprising that this is what we are having to
now
see.
Why is president, what do you expect the president to do? Told the advice or disregard it? Because at the end of the day, we see that he's also part of the APC government, which Professor Moghalu condemned yesterday.
No, but I don't think it's of course definitely it's in the president's place to decide what he does with it. Let's forget the back and forth that played out yesterday. I don't think it is unhealthy in that sense. Of course, governance is all about debates, and debate should be formed around being healthy so that you get the best options. That's one. Then two, Moghalu yesterday clearly said, I am not here as a politician. I am only here as a technocrat and as a patriotic Nigerian who wants to see the best work for Nigeria. Of course, the president is at liberty to distill from what he has said, pick the ones he thinks will be suitable for his government. The president is the one on the driver's seat. From where he sits, he should be able to know what should work and what shouldn't work. But there's a critical thing Moghalu said yesterday, which is quite fundamental, which is, what do you use power for? I think that was at the heart, another critical issue he kept hitting. That it is not just enough to have power. There should be a clear philosophical thinking around why you have power. Such that if you have this power, you should be able to use it transformatively for proper and quality governance. Anything outside of that, then,
Well, it's on that note we are going on a break. When we come back, we still have so much to talk about on the keynote speakers address yesterday at Leadership Conference and Awards. Don't go away, stay tuned.
Be part of our brand. Leadership for God and country.
just joining us, the program is The Big Issue. The Big Issue today, we are looking at the fallout of leadership conference and our ceremony yesterday in Abuja. Of course, the keynote speaker was Professor Kingsley Moghalu, and he made some silent points during his keynote yesterday. So we are analyzing that keynote. First, before we went on break, he also talked about President or advising President Tinubu on rejigging his cabinet as 1 year draws near. What is your take on that?
Well, I think that's another fundamental.
And of course, before you answer, what came to many people's mind was so soon, 1 year. What can a minister or even DGs, for starters, do within 1 year? And of course, another people chorus that, if Nigeria's poster boy, Tunji Ojo, could do so much in just this month of being in office, so a lot is also expected from this minister. What is your take?
I do agree. Both sides have good arguments, but every ministry is not the same.
Yes.
The impact you get, the visibility you get in some, you might not get in others.
Yes.
The impact you get from some, you might not get from others within the same space of time.
Yes.
So it might not be necessarily fair to say, okay, one minister has achieved so much, whereas this one is not doing anything, because we might require some time to germinate and before you start seeing them shoot out of the ground. So that's it. But I do also agree with those who think 1 year is enough to send some people back in. And that is not discountenancing the notion that some of the first set of people who become ministers, particularly when the new president comes in, I usually they usually give them positions for political reasons, not necessarily And the worst case scenario we saw was under the Yaradua time when he became president, and then he flooded the whole place with most of the positions. The key positions went to former governors, his peers at the time. You had the Udenwa from Imo, you had the Ebonyi guy, you had some other guys occupying, and when there was a lot of.
We also saw that during Obasanjo's first tenure too.
Well, Obasanjo's Obasanjo's first tenure was more of this was the first time.
Just politicians.
Exactly. So the only time we really had people who was the Jonathan brought in a bit more technocrats than he had politicians. Whether we like it or not, we could see the impact. Because under that space of time, Nigeria's economy was about the best in Africa. And we saw the leaps and bounds that happened, such that even the world had to take note of Nigeria's economical revolution at the time. So I do agree.
And some of the, just like to link credence to what you just said, and some of the bad hands that Jonathan had that time, it's still Akiwumi and
exactly. And you saw before we came here, it was on television giving the award, the award.
Product of Jonathan's administration.
Exactly. So I think these are some of the critical things I think he was pointing to. Moghalu now. These are the things he was pointing to. That if after 1 year you do not see ministers who show promise, not necessarily result, because like we established earlier, some ministries will but there has to be an inclination that this guy is heading somewhere. Let's give him some time to work or to tie up a few of the things and loose ends so that whatever he has can. But clearly there might be others who
are just
however,
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did nominate Hadiza Usman to be the call her headmistress to assess the works of some of these ministers. But we are not hearing from her. She's been silent all this while. But at least she's supposed to be feeding Nigerians on the progress made so far, her expectations and where we are. But she's not doing that.
But I don't know what template she has. Maybe I have to visit I have to look up the templates that she was given on her to perform with.
The president did say that she was to assess
yes. No, but the assessment, is it for us, for the public to have access to, or just for the president's own pleasure? So that's another thing. And we also need to know. Maybe it's out there. I don't know. So let me not speak in a way that does not reflect what currently is on ground. Is it that when such assessments are made, she will make them public,
Or
or
just
she
had
will
them
keep
on
it to the
writing.
president. Secondly, on what basis are these assessments going to be on? What template is she going to work with? How are you going to assess them? Is it going to be weekly? Is it going to be monthly? Is it going to be in a year? Are you going to rate them on the same level? Are you going to look at the distinct personalities, or no, peculiarities rather, of their ministries and all of that? So these are you going to look based on their budgeting? Are you going to look based on the budgetary allocation, not just the budget?
Yes.
What is budgeted, but what is actually given to them to work
allocation.
with. So these are you also going to look at the condition of the country they met, the condition of the sector they met? So there are a lot of things to look at. There are a whole lot of things to look at. So it's going to it's going to be a very, very she has to really be on ground. But you also have to look at the political dynamics too. Because in doing that, well, Adiza is known to be a no-nonsense person. That's the interpretation she has. So she wouldn't mind stepping on toes. But that's the position that's going to put her in a place where she has to step on toes.
Yes. Now, apart from Adiza doing her work, what do you expect from the president? Because we are about rounding up.
Yeah.
Time is fast spent. So what do you expect the president to do? And given these recommendations that Professor Moghalu has just made?
I think it's all the president needs to do is just have the political will to do the job. But as we know, it's not just enough to have the political will, even though that is key. But you have to you have to be able to recruit the best minds around you and have the capacity to discern, what to do, who to listen to per time, what to apply per time, and be sensitive, really sensitive to the pulse and the feelings of the people. Because in isolation of that, because at times you might just have a whole lot of people around you telling you the same thing, being as a sounding board to you, and they are likely going to tell you what you want to hear. So unless you go out of that bubble once in a while, you might not necessarily know what is going on out there. So the president has to devise a way. Of course, I'm not going to talk about advisors and all, because there's a replica. He can get any kind of advice.
He has a
He can exactly. So, but he has to really go out of the bubble once in a while to really feel the pulse of the people, really, so that he can really know, okay, this is what is actually going on. So that I can marry that with whatever he's been told. In that, there's the famous saying about one of the Caesars. I think it's Marcus Aurelius. He always made a point of having a man behind him, a guy behind him, who would constantly whisper to him, "Remember, you're just a man. Remember, you're just a man." And if you know how the Caesars of those days used to be, they used to be all powerful. If you are Caesar, you are Caesar. Anything you point to, you get. So but he needed. So there's this godlike complex that you naturally have to come into as a Caesar. And if you look at the way that is, because they also have a Senate, so you could almost liken that to our presidential system, or the presidential system we have today. So unless he has that kind of person
behind him
in some way, maybe not an human being or something, but an alternate voice reminding him of the urgency of what he has to do, reminding him this is what you promised the people, this is what you represent, this is what you should represent. It might become a bit cloudy.
Now we are just about 2 months shy from 1 year of this present administration in power. Now, what is your assessment, overall assessment so far?
Oh boy.
Especially based on the silent issues Professor Moghalu raised yesterday.
I think it goes back to the fundamentals. There is no doubt that the president inherited a terrible Nigeria from his predecessor, former president Muhammadu Buhari. And then he now has the handicap of managing that because they are from the same party. You can't be damaging him. There's no way you can hit at him without hitting at your party. And for a party, of course, that want to continue in power and seek elections,
and also not just
it will be quite difficult.
hurting your party, also
Exactly.
indicting himself.
Indicting
because many Nigerians are of the opinion that he never said
was a
anything
participant,
while he was in power.
So it's always going to be difficult for him to move at the pace he would have wanted to. But however, if you ask for my assessment, I think he got it terribly wrong, just as many of them others have said, and I agree totally with Mr. Moghalu. Those two policies, the way he went about them, were not the best, especially when you don't have your cabinet in place. If you had your cabinet in place, perhaps it would have shaped your thinking or shaped your help, assist in making sure that there's a very clear idea on what you intend to do. Now, but just look at it. After declaring those policies, he made some promises. Where are the CNG buses? Where are they? And now he has put himself in a position where people have to start asking, the monies you remove from subsidies, where are they? Where are they going to? Now he's supposed to tell Nigerians, oh, they are with your governors. But was that what he said? What of the things you're supposed to do? So it's a bit cloudy and hazy at the moment.
So you are not seeing any light for now?
Well, we can only hope for the best because Nigeria is for all of us to ensure it works. So the only thing we can keep doing is to keep encouraging the president, to keep at it, and of course to, like we said earlier, try to come out of the bubble once in a while to really know what is going on, to really hear and feel the pulse from the street on what is really happening.
Thank you so much. Well, as a party servo, most presidents, when they get there, because we had former past president Muhammadu Buhari telling us that he was going to fight corruption to a standstill, fight insurgency that was ravaging the north. At the end of the day, there's something that is in the villa that they are so much insulated from what is happening in the wider Nigeria. So it's on that note we end today's The Big Issue. Of course, we'll be looking at the fallout of leaderships conference and awards yesterday in Abuja. That's right from the keynote speaker, Professor Kingsley Moghalu. This is where we end today's The Big Issue. Of course, I've also had with me in the studio leaderships news analyst Chibuzo Ukabe. Chibuzo, thank you so much for your contribution. I look forward to having you on the set next time. My name is Winifred Ogwebo. Here's wishing you a beautiful day ahead. Good night.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080 6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.